Hi and welcome to this week's video. In this one we make a milestone. We've got wiggly bits, look, wiggly bits. So join me to see how I get on. So I've just laid in my false trailing edge along at the top here on the starboard wing. I haven't done the port wing yet, to give near enough a 1/4 inch clearance there. This trailing edge section I've cut to give an angle like that, so about halfway through we've got 1/8 of an inch or so at the back edge here to make sure that it doesn't get bent up by covering and things. I've notched it exactly the same way as I notched the trailing edges, so there's no real difference there. Looking over here, I think that's going to end up having to be notched out slightly for the control horn when the aileron's in the fully up position, but we'll find out when we get there. Now we've got a push rod that's going to be going through here, going through to the bell crank, and I can't fabricate that until I've got the aileron free, so I can see, because it needs to have a bend in it. There's a bend about this sort of position here, about here. There's a slight bend as shown on the plan, as required, so that when the aileron is in the fully droop position, the push rod doesn't end up touching the back here. We don't want to have too much of a bend. The smallest bend we can have, the better. And then because I want it to go through the covering nice and neatly, I will be putting a piece of 1/4 inch material across here, something like that I should think, going across and then going across up there on top of the geodetic, something in that sort of fashion there. So we've got a piece of plywood that goes from here up across there. It'll come out over the edge here by about 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and that way it'll cover the support the covering, give a good enough glue area for the covering to go on. The rearmost point here where I've cut the rib is 5/8 of an inch back from the rear face of the rear spar, and I've cut into the false trailing edge by 3/8 of an inch, half the thickness, or half the width of the wood. These ribs will now need to be rounded off better for the leading edge skins, and that'll be done once we've actually got the aileron free. These are the upper tip skins, and as you can sort of see, I've actually chamfered this back. I've made it deeper than it shows on the plan. I made it very slightly deep, about I suppose 1/4 of an inch deeper, and then chamfered the actual leading edge skin very slightly to help accept it, and this will make like a scarfing joint. It'll be bonded onto the leading edge and taped in its correct shape, and I'll show you that when I get round to it. And then where it actually goes onto the bow, this will be filled with a structural filler resin built up with the cotton flocking to stiffen it. Then I'll let it all dry and cure, and then I'll put a normal resin underneath here, and this thin edge here will then flex around that the bow with it all set in position. If you try to do it all in one, what I've found in the past is we end up with this section here sitting up too much. It's sort of like at 90 degrees, which isn't what I want. I want it to actually lay back and make a nice smooth transition. This is the thickened resin which I'm going to use. I've already wetted in the joint along the edge of the joint with just pure resin, so it soaks into the wood, and then this, which is I suppose sort of like thick cream So it's not very easy for me to sort of show you with the masking tape in position and things, but along the edge in there is the sort of bead of reinforced resin. The skin is currently being held in position by this masking tape, or painter's tape as our American brethren like to call it, which really sort of shows how the covering will go across the top. And then these two pieces of wood here are there just to help clamp down the very edge against the main leading edge skin, although that'll be sanded back and there may be some ply showing, you know, some of the laminates showing through, but that's not a problem. So I've taken the tape off and I've just sanded this back, so it's a nice smooth transition going back to forwards. You can sort of see the laminates of ply there, it's nice and smooth. And now that the tape's off, you can see that gusset line running along there. Hopefully that's in focus. Running along there, going into the groove. This is now cured enough that we can start forcing this edge down. As you can see, I made it sort of really thin, so we can actually force this edge down and comply all the way around, and that will get that bit sorted out. We've got the false trailing edge section in, bonded, so we're now at the point on the port wing where I can take it off the bench. Starboard wing has just got a little bit of bonding to cure, and I can do the same with it, so it's only slightly behind, but hey ho, nearly there. Here's the wing upside down. Needs a little bit of cleaning up in one or two spots where we've got a little bit of extra glue. Just a small amount in various places, but most of it's pretty good. We've got tip work to do here with the gusset, sorting that out. This area here needs to be gusseted. You can sort of see what that's like, and here there's a little step there in the glue wood, but that's not a problem because the gusset, when we machine that back, will clear that bit out of the way. I've put some tape on the aileron horn so we don't rub off all the paint while it's upside down. So now that we're in this state, you can see we've got this gap here on the plywood, and so I'm going to put glue in here, and then this will all be clamped back tight against there. Then we'll sand it for the other section to go over. So I've sanded back the section which I bent up and it clamped into place for the secondary bonding on this tip section. It's got a slightly sort of square edge section there, because when the next piece goes over it will wrap around and then we'll round it off. You will see slight ply laminations being in there when it's done. So I made up these little jig pieces here for marking the scallops out of the leading edge for where it needs to be dressed back. That allows for the covering to go between, and I used the template on the plan as a guide to start off with, but found it wasn't symmetrical for some reason, so I just drew up a replacement for that. And I've put a stop on here. That goes up against the false leading edge, and so we end up with the same depth, and you can sort of see I've allowed a slight inset so as it we can get the depth just perfect as we go along. and so it goes into position. I can draw one half, put it in, and draw the other half as I go across. And there's our scallop. The reason for cutting it in two is the width that's from the plan was not enough to go across fully across there, so it allows me to do the slightly wider gaps, and where we've got the section here which is shorter between the root rib and the first rib and the last half rib and the tip rib. Okay, let me show you how I do these scallops or scallops or whatever you like to call them on the leading edges here. I'm just going to dress this back. I'm using a Dremel with a medium coarse grit and a vacuum cleaner, so it's going to be a bit noisy, so I'll cut the sound for you. That's the easy bit done, not quite to the line. Using some 100 grit here, I'm just going to bring it up to the corner because I can't do that with the Dremel tool. So that's now to shape and back to the line. I'm just using some 320 grit now, just to round that edge off a bit. And there we have one scallop. I'll do all of them. Normally I'll just go through with the Dremel tool and then I come back and do the sanding, but I just thought I'd show you doing the one. Right, so I'm about to put the my little pieces on my fairing pieces. I'm using a aliphatic resin. The great thing about aliphatic resins is that they are water based, so they're light when they dry, and they're also dry fairly hard, so they're easy to sand, which is better than the normal PVA type glues. I only stick it, put the glue on one surface, and then we'll just clamp it down to place, and then tomorrow we'll be able to sand these little fellows down and finish them off. And then these little strips are ready now to be sanded back. So this is just 16th balsa. I cut it just over 1/4 inch wide, so I've got a little bit to sand out, and it's about 1.25 inches long, and it'll be sanded slightly shorter than that. So I just literally just sand it across, not really there, but just make sure it's faired in. I'll just sand down the sides because I made it slightly over 1/4 inch. And then just to harden it up, I'm just using thin CA. I just run a little bit of thin CA over like that. That'll harden it up. And then a bit of 240 on there. Just smooth it down, and that's what I'll do all the way along the whole lot. And that just means that the covering now has got a nice transition. There's no chance, otherwise you end up ironing down right here, you end up with a sudden notch. And it's not so bad on the bottom. That wouldn't be too much of a performance issue on the bottom, but on the top it produces that ridge, and it's amazing how much a pimple can make the difference to the stall speed. It's not like a proper vortex generator which is mounted further back that helps attach the airflow on. It just helps the airflow break up. And as I was reminded not too many months ago by a friend of mine who found that his takeoff run took an awful lot further to go after his aircraft had been rained on, and it just stuck to the fabric of the wing. So it's one of those little things. It doesn't take long to do, doesn't cost anything really in weight. Well, it costs a little bit in weight, but very little in weight, and it just helps everything flow slightly better. You know me, go that extra little bit sometimes. So the underside of this, the port wing, is pretty much done. The gussets are in all the positions. The false trailing edge has been fitted, exactly the same as we did for the top. I filled that gap that was there. If you remember when I was talking about if you've been following for a time, when I put the support ribs in, I said they were slightly shy on depth. So exactly the same way as I did the leading edge just behind the skin, I just put in a piece of balsa, bonded in and hardened with the super glue. And here we are, ready to free the aileron. I've literally just used a rule to transfer the lines down each side of the gap there, so I know I'll cut between those. I want to cut out a section, and I've done the same up this end here, just so you can see I cut through there and it hasn't moved at all. I mean it could have flexed either way, but we can see that that's dead neutral. That's great. As I anticipated, we haven't got the up travel because of the horn hitting there, so there's no mention of that in the plans or anything, but we'll have to work around that. Right, so I thought I'd have a little play just to double check that I was right. So if I put my clino on, I don't know if you can see, I'll zero it. It is 0. So I've got 0 degrees. The manual says that the aileron should go up 22 to 25 degrees. So we're at neutral there. I go all the way up to, I am literally just over 25 degrees there, 25.25 degrees. And as you can tell, there's a big cutout there, not much meat left in it, and this hole is just about level, so there's no way I could get a control rod to go into there. It doesn't say anything about this on the plan, so it's a little bit of a head scratcher. My solution is I'm going to put a piece of triangular section of wood, 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch triangular section, under here to support the false trailing edge. I've got to work out how far out, and then I'll cut this false trailing edge out completely straight the way across, because as I've said before, I'm already planning to put a cover piece of ply over here for where the push rod will go through. Well, that's it really for this week. We're at 260 hours of build time, and out of that 260 hours, 26 hours is modifications of mine, so you can subtract 26 hours if you didn't do the modifications, like putting in the gussets where it doesn't call for them. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up. You can subscribe or even hit the little bell notification for future videos. Any comments would be appreciated and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Remember, go fly and feel the sky.